She thought she was marrying into a fairy tale, golden gates, endless jewels, and palatial wealth that rivaled the fantasy of her childhood imagination. But Meghan Markle's illusion shattered the moment she realized Prince Harry was not the billionaire Prince Charming she'd envisioned, not the tech mogul or sovereign tycoon her American dreams had conjured, but a man torn between titles and traumas, bound to an archaic monarchy that was more pageant than power, more duty than dynasty. And that betrayal, yes, betrayal, of expectations set in motion the chain of events that would ripple across Buckingham Palace, across continents, across the world stage, in a storm of media manipulation, family fractures, and legacy-level chaos the firm had never prepared for. Because long before the crowns, the cameras, and the curated chaos, there was Meghan, gritty, driven, always calculating, a woman shaped not by privilege but by ambition, forged in the competitive fire of Hollywood audition rooms and late-night calls with agents who promised her something more, something better, something bigger. She wasn't born into glitz. She hunted it, stalked it, engineered it, moving from student films to minor roles to that long-desired breakout on Suits. Every gig a rung up the social ladder, every red carpet a battlefield, every romance a transaction if not a stepping stone. And when a friend passed along her student film to a manager, it wasn't just about art. It was about leverage, about exposure, about sealing a deal that would demand 10% of her earnings and 100% of her identity. Because Meghan was never just an actress, she was a brand in the making, and LA was her crucible. And yet, what no one in Kensington expected was just how prepared she was to pivot, to rebrand, to marry myth with marketing. And when she crossed paths with Prince Harry, the disillusioned spare whose childhood had been consumed by paparazzi flashbulbs and maternal loss, she saw not a broken man, but a broken system to disrupt, to infiltrate, to redefine. And with a designer dress, a global audience, and a Windsor Castle wedding that looked like a Disney reboot, Meghan Markle did just that. But the story didn't stop at the vows. No, it was only beginning. Because inside those palace walls, where history whispers and protocol suffocates, Meghan found not sanctuary, but surveillance, not empowerment, but entrapment. And though Queen Elizabeth may have once smiled at her poise and camera-savvy charm, even calling her refreshing, it didn't take long for admiration to curdle into wariness, and behind closed doors, the whisper network ignited. Lady Elizabeth Anson reportedly claimed Meghan didn't love Harry the way royals were supposed to love, that her gaze was too strategic, her moves too rehearsed, her affection too curated, and suddenly the glossy Duchess veneer began to crack under the weight of centuries-old expectations and modern-day social media hysteria. There were no late-night bonding sessions with. And so, the gates of Buckingham slammed shut, not with a grand proclamation or final salute, but with silence, awkward pauses, and briefings to tabloids behind anonymous palace aides who suddenly knew every moment Meghan ever blinked out of line. And while the world thought Harry and Meghan had left the monarchy for love and liberty, the truth, tangled in contracts and contradiction, was far less romantic. They didn't escape royalty. They rebranded it, repackaged it, and resold it with a Netflix production budget and Spotify backing that for a moment made Montecito feel like the new Windsor, only warmer and more camera-ready. And Meghan wasn't just surviving the system that rejected her. She was monetizing her exile with polished vulnerability, a curated drip of trauma recollections, and brand narratives wrapped in soothing progressive tones. And yet the cracks in the strategy began to show as early as the Netflix docuseries, when critics from both sides of the pond, royalist and radical, began to wonder aloud, were Harry and Meghan speaking their truth or scripting it? Because while the docuseries opened with a cinematic montage of their love, private selfies, baby Archie's first giggle, late-night diary footage, what followed was less about love than grievance, less about healing than branding, and the world, starved for authenticity but exhausted by performance, began to turn one suspicious Instagram post, one aggressively filtered candid at a time. Spotify didn't last. The $20 million deal that was supposed to give Meghan her Diana moment in podcast form dissolved into controversy after archetypes failed to stick the cultural landing and a top executive at Spotify labeled the Sussexes fucking grifters in a brutal mic drop moment that ricocheted through media circles and PR firms who'd once touted them as untouchable. And behind all the branded hashtags and media gloss, something darker festered. The irrevocable collapse of brotherhood, because they're waiting for the fall, the flame out, the reckoning they think always comes to women who dare to script their own mythologies. But Meghan, resilient to the point of rebellion, isn't writing for them. Not anymore. Because after being chewed up by a monarchy that never wanted her, and then rebranded into a Netflix-sized spectacle that turned vulnerability into visual content, she knows what her critics refuse to admit. This is the cost of power in the 21st century, and it's bloodier, lonelier, and more algorithmically complex than any throne room. Because in this new arena of brand warfare, Instagram influence, and media saturation, your relevance must be refreshed weekly or you die a digital death, and Meghan is not ready to vanish into irrelevance. Not now, not ever, not after everything she's endured. But even the fiercest reinvention has its limits, and as the Hollywood landscape shifts, Meghan finds herself in a uniquely dangerous position. Not quite royalty, not quite celebrity, beloved by millions but distrusted by millions more. A woman whose every move is read like a press release, whose every silence is dissected for hidden meaning, whose every gesture of grace is accused of being choreographed. Montecito, once their sun-drenched escape, now feels more like a branded battleground where Archewell-branded idealism collides with tabloid cynicism, and the stakes are no longer just royal, they're existential. Because as deals falter, Spotify gone, Netflix questioning future projects, and insiders whispering that studios have grown cautious about the Sussex brand, the fear begins to creep in. What if the world is tired? What if the narrative is spent? And most damning of all, what if Meghan Markle's final reinvention isn't as a feminist icon or American aristocrat, but as a symbol of the very thing she tried so hard to escape, performative, privileged, and painfully out of touch? Already, social media threads dissect her every eyebrow raise. Digital sleuths track her wardrobe for contradictions between message and material. And former allies, celebrities who once reposted her inspirational quotes, have grown quiet, wary of tying themselves too tightly to a brand teetering on the edge of public fatigue. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, once the rebel prince turned husband turned memoirist, is reportedly struggling to find his footing in this next chapter. No longer a soldier, no longer a working royal, and not quite the Hollywood power player his wife needs him to be. Insiders hint at tension, creative disagreements, and moments where the fairy tale edges dangerously close to domestic frustration. And yet, through it all, Meghan smiles for the cameras, releases her carefully scripted statements, and posts her inspirational captions because she knows the moment she stumbles, the world will devour her. But beneath the polished exterior, the cracks are showing. Reports of staff burnout, project delays, and strained partnerships leak with increasing frequency. Rumors swirl that American Riviera Orchard is a branding mess behind the scenes, with luxury vendors unsure how to position a duchess in exile selling designer jam while still claiming a mantle of humanitarian urgency. And as critics pounce, they raise one unavoidable question: is Meghan out of ideas? Because while her early narrative, American actress marries prince, challenges monarchy, reclaims agency, was explosive and timely, that arc is over now. The world is moving on. The media cycle spins faster than ever. And if Meghan doesn't evolve past her grievances, she risks being reduced to them. Another footnote in the long, brutal tale of celebrity implosion. But she's fighting back. Rumors suggest she's quietly developing a new media platform, one centered not on royal fallout, but on curated optimism, high-gloss lifestyle, and what her team allegedly calls a post-Duchess identity. That's the future Meghan sees for herself. Less Princess Diana, more Oprah meets Martha Stewart, a cultural curator with royal roots and a modern sensibility. But to get there, she'll have to let go of the feud, of the interviews, of the constant need to explain herself, because the public has stopped listening to the apologies. They want action, reinvention, impact. And perhaps the only way for Meghan Markle to truly win now is to do the unthinkable. Stop talking. Stop confessing. Build quietly, lead authentically, and let results speak where interviews no longer land. But can she? Or has she built an identity too intertwined with narrative control to ever surrender it? Time will tell. What's certain is that the media, British, American, global, is watching, ready to elevate or eviscerate her depending on the success of her next move. And while Meghan has proven she can take the hits, can survive the onslaught, can weather the headlines, she's never had to face the slow, suffocating silence of waning interest. That's the final boss.